Before we do end the webinar, we have a lot to cover. First and foremost being HR isn't attracting the right job seekers to begin with. And we'll kind of tie in why, this obviously impacts turnover at the end of the day. First and foremost, I want to, have a little poll question here. What do you think is the cost of employee turnover? I'm going to share that right now for everybody to fill out. But I'm curious what everyone's thoughts are on it. Dana, first and foremost, my question for you while people are filling that out. What are the top reasons for turnover in today's workforce, would you say?
That is the question of the day. Luckily, as employee retention experts, this is something we've been studying for years. We do exit interviews across the world, as you mentioned, in 59 countries, and we really have a lot of research on this. And what we've really seen is that we know that employees are really only leaving for one of 20 different reasons. That really represents 95% of why turnover is happening in the entire world. And this changes from year to year. And that's why we look at the data year to year, because, things wane and things change and what's going on in the world. And there are nuances also by geography, industry, demographics. So that's why collecting this data is so important, to see what those nuances are. But to give the reveal, the top reasons we saw it last year in terms of some of those primary drivers of turnover, we saw career advancement and promotion. So people leaving because they're finding better advancement opportunities elsewhere. Compensation salary is driving people. Supervisor manager relationship. And finally, work-life balance. And those, I would say, in that order, are the key primary drivers of turnover that we're seeing. And we also have seen that it's not typically always just one reason that employees are leaving, not one just motivational driver. There are those repellents, things that are pushing employees out of the organization. And why we're looking at why we originally joined might not be why we're leaving and why I finally quit. So identifying those reasons, and for HR teams to know what those repellents are, that's really going to help us understand how we can reduce turnover and understand those root causes at our organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It points me perfectly to this first slide. First of all, recapping the poll question I asked, what do you think is the cost of employee turnover? Majority of people are saying 45% of the employee's annual salary. We have one answer of 70% of the employee's annual salary. And I think if we turn to this slide, we'll be very interested to see that, in fact, it ranges and everyone's a winner. Chason, I'm curious, why is turnover so high in recent years? Just looking at this slide and kind of looking at the range that we have here.
Yes. So first of all, it is higher. It's not just a hunch. If you're feeling it, if you're like, I've been doing this for a while, this seems like more, it is. It's increased 50% compared to what it was 10 years ago. It really peaked in 2020. The worst of it in this post-COVID era, when it hit 70-year highs for as long as it's been tracked in the United States. We hit the peak turnover. It's softened slightly since then. Even now, though, it's double of what it was in the late 2000s. Did you call those the aughts, the Audis? Is that what we call that? The zeros of the century? So in some industries, wherever it was, it is now double. Last 3 years, we hit this perfect storm. The reason why it's higher right now, and it will remain elevated, is, by the way, because of really population issues. There literally are not enough people to do the jobs that we have right now. 10,000 big boomers are retiring every day. And there's just not enough humans to replace them, literally. But specifically, this perfect storm of turnover we saw is because a consistent disengagement from employers, that it was just this latent lack of interest in the job. COVID provided laser-focused introspection, and the financial cushion of stimulus and extended unemployment really created an environment where I don't want to sell sugar water. I don't want to sweat for something I don't care about. So I want to use my talents, right? My skills matter. And it's not worth like $8 an hour, $10 an hour to put myself in a state of perpetual discontent. What they did, Meredith, is they listened to their grandparents, right? What did your grandma, Mima, what'd you call her? No.
I called her grandma. Yeah.
Grandma.
Yeah. Classic.
Yeah. Bubby, Zadie, whoever it was, whatever out there, like they're probably saying something like, love your job. Yeah. Right. That's what's important, right? The world collectively took inventory of who I am. And they listened, they're like, yeah, I really want to at least like my job. So, and that's where the Great Resignation was born, and quiet quitting was this manifestation of what has been occurring, over the last 20 or 30 years used to be called presenteeism. So it's been around. Quiet quitting has been around, but it just exacerbated. And people began to just take stock of this reality. And that's why it is high. And if we don't address those issues, it'll stay high. Now, here's where I think the beautiful opportunity is for small businesses, because I really genuinely think this is, the metaphorical crisis opportunity, symbol in the Chinese language, in Mandarin. And that is that small businesses, and by virtue of that, the small HR teams, can create a deeper, more meaningful, sustained connection to the mission of the organization than large. Right? I'm not a cog. I'm not part of the wheel. But when you're a small business, right, and you're working there, you're really seeing the outcome of your work. That's what people were looking for. That's what they were disenchanted by, and they were waiting for. And if we can ring that bell, if we can hold that beacon high as an organization, then we will get people who want to do this, who want to be here, who want to stay.
I was thinking, with COVID, I'm like, who's to blame for employee turnover? Like, whose finger should we be pointing at? And it's a hard question because at the end of the day, like, of course, like anything else, a lot of people are like, there's no right answer. There's no, it was this person's fault. It's Gen Z's fault. It's HR's fault. It's realistically a compilation of things. And I really think COVID exacerbated, as you said, a lot of it. Like quiet quitting, as you said, has been around forever. But at the same time, it spiked so much during COVID, and a lot of people started to reevaluate. Competition with salary really increased. People who work at the Chipotle are going to look across the street and go to the Qdoba, that's offering a little bit higher of a wage. So it's really hard. And that's where, measuring up is really hard, because you can't really do that very correctly unless you're offering insane benefits or, compensation that just blows the competition out of the water, which is impossible. Nobody's doing that. Right.
Right.
So Chason, I'm curious, what free technology tools do you recommend HR managers to actually just look into in their day-to-day to speed up the hiring process, make sure that people are kind of coming in the door, on day one, ready to go?
Yeah, so the absolutely must, 100% free, is ONET. For all job descriptions. This is a spectacular tool that's subsidized by the US government. Basically, there is not a job description, not a job posting that you can't get access to on Earth. So you never start from a blank sheet of paper. Anyone who has to create that, that's a good place to start, never charging a penny. And then applicant tracking systems, as we sort of move towards that streamlining, still some organizations, and it really is unnecessary and unfortunate, they're not using an ATS to manage the intake and processing those candidates and new hires. And if you're not using that, you're losing time. It's just a never-ending task to have the processing of candidates' resumes, having a funnel. Why are you doing that by hand and by any means? We use applicant staff for $50 a month. You can get several postings. If you're doing massive hiring, maybe you're going to 100, and you're saving 10 times that with a good ATS. Certainly workforce.com, and the tool sets that exist here to automate, to streamline, to actually get to where you're using something that is putting time back in your day. And then when they get there, once you have them in here, Talent Pulse has a candidate 360. This allows HR not to do the outreach for reference track down. Right? You're chasing reference. And how many people here aren't doing reference checks because ain't got time for that, right? Can't do it.
That's a great question. I'm curious, people in the chat, to hear what your guys' thoughts are on that.
Yes. Are you doing reference checks, or you just don't get to it? Don't have to, right? So the Talent Pulse pushes that out to the candidate. The candidate is actually driving the process. So now you have this, critical insights about the last 3, 4, 5 people they work for or work with. You have decisions that could drive the selection, or at very least how to manage and onboard them, working to their strengths or the areas to develop, because it was out of your hands, and software has done the work for you. Again, low, no cost, easy, massive time savers. If there's anything in HR that is going to save you money, it's worth it. Spend it, because you will move yourself, you move HR, you move all of us up the value chain and the impact that we're having with that work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Marge actually in the chat said we have a qualifier of getting 2 positive reference checks for each applicant. I think that's great. And I think, Marge, I'm curious to kind of go into that a little bit more. How long does that take? Theoretically, if you guys had any technology, I'm not sure, at your disposal, how long would that take you guys? Because
Right.
I think, again, if the theme is to essentially take out the theoretical paperwork off of HR's desk and declutter it a little bit, put a little bit on technology, I think that's huge. And that frees up so much time to work on retention programs, to work on, talking with the employees, kind of being on the ground level. And, we talked a little bit about, ATS system. Wow, Marge, I am so impressed. You said no tech, just me. I call about 4 to 5 to get 2 to 3 calls back. Most are positive. And again, that is hard.
Sorry, I just wrote on the beast. You are Marge.
Like, seriously.
You are these.
Marge,
but here's the thing, Marge, though, but I'm aching for you, right? And anyone else who's right there with you, which is, but what could you be doing if you were in beast mode on employee onboarding, if you were on beast mode for training development or motivation and morale or rewards and recognition, that's where really humans can make the difference. And that's where it's exciting where sort of technology.
Yeah. And going into that, I'm curious, Chason, what are some technologies that are maybe more worth the investment? Of course, with technology and, AI being everywhere, you can literally Google anything and get a free website. You might need to sign up for something and you'll have access to it. But what are some that are maybe worth that credit card payment or something that's like a very low threshold that they can start with?
I think you said something that that resonated with me, and that I think is a theme in this conversation, and declutter. Mm-hmm. And we all walk into our room or our office or our place or our kid's room. I mean, if you've got a teenager, what hurricane, right, came through? What maybe isn't as clear is that sometimes our HR process is so cluttered, mm-hmm. and we don't even notice because it's not papers, let's say, on the desk, but it's sort of plates spinning in the air. So the decluttering, Meredith, I think is really a fantastic idea that we can bake into that process. Mm-hmm. In terms of tools that are out there, so low cost stuff or no cost stuff. Free Fuse, you can create learning trees. It's kind of an interesting, cool system. Most people don't like, you cannot sit in front of like 2 or 3 hours of learning, of training, of an onboarding. It's just not practical. The learning tree is really the modern adult learning experience. So I take a bite, 7 minutes, 12 minutes, 14. Mm-hmm. And did I get what I need? I'm done. Okay, but I want to go deeper. Well, then here's the thing. And there's technology out there that you can create that learning module, those components, and just take a bite. Take another bite, take another bite. Claude AI is kind of cool and fun as we're starting to see better visualizations. So you can upload like an Excel sheet and in a matter of seconds, you have data visualization on your hiring pool, number of applicants. So if you're trying to convert a spreadsheet into like meaning, and let me tell you, friends don't let friends look at spreadsheets. Yeah, that's awesome. There's no good has come of you looking at a spreadsheet. Please, you got to get graphs and charts out of that. The things that are revealed in a matter of seconds. Yes. Then you have a particular insight. Here's what not to do. Okay, do not use ChatGPT. Mm-hmm. And I've read this. I've seen this. People are talking about this to make survey questions. That is a terrible idea. They're not vetted. They're not intelligent. They're not connective. The tissue across employee experience has no idea. They might not even be legal. Mm-hmm. Because it's only reading what was on the internet before. And have you seen the internet? That's not.
Some might say.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. So absolutely don't use it to do that. Generative AI, incredibly powerful and tremendous tool sets and capabilities that can be advancing your team, your communication, and ideas, but survey questions is just an awful one.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, earlier we talked a little bit about ATS systems and having that comprehensive funnel where there's quite literally no paper to be on your desk at the end of the day. And, you like for Workforce's ATS system, we literally have you print out a QR code, throw it on your, storefront window. People can go around, and quite frankly, a lot of younger employees are very familiar with what a QR code, how that works. So they can quite literally scan it, fill out a very simple resume that you can customize completely, add in whatever questions you want, whatever credentials you need to be had. And it will just be all in your workforce management system. It's connected to your HR, your payroll, so they can be onboarded in quite literally 3 minutes. I mean, this is what I mean when I say that you are quite literally saving time and money, and you are going to be improving your internal systems at the end of the day with all that time and money that is saved. And leadership is going to reward that. When they see HR performing, they're going to want to put more money into something that is performing very well. And when they're seeing that employees are, happy, and you're onboarding the right people and onboarding them quickly, to say the least, and especially in today's competitive environment, you want to be able to get people in the door ASAP, right? The second that they ghost you, we have a whole webinar on ghosting and how it is detrimental. And don't even get me started. We can go on another tangent on ghosting. So don't even get me started on that. But it's all about saving that time and money. And if you have an ATS system that, of course, we at Workforce believe is very much worth the investment, and, checking it out, I think is huge. And just kind of seeing what that looks like on your end. Marge, I see your question. And just to quickly answer that, we will definitely supply a list. In fact, I'm curious, for people in the audience, would you want me to type up a list of some of Chason's suggestions? I'm happy to do so and send it out in an email. If you would like that, feel free to throw it in the chat, and I'm happy to do that. Awesome.
And one more thing, Meredith, you are on fire today. QR code, okay? Have to understand, have to talk about this. If you're not using a QR code, you are wasting time. Find the place where you right now are reaching out to your staff like more than once, following up, like going for it. That's a place where you push the QR code and they come to you.
Yes.
That's free technology. It's baked into any good software in HR. If they don't have it, honestly, you shouldn't be using it because it saves you massive time. We've been doing QR codes on exit interviews because Asia, way before COVID, Asia was QR coding. All over. We're obviously familiar with it because we went to a restaurant, and didn't want to touch a menu. And so there's more familiarity, but absolutely it is baked into every cell phone, every smartphone. Over 90% of the US population now has a smartphone. This will be a tremendous, simple, free time saver for you.
Yeah. And if we're talking, we have a whole nother webinar on this too, but attracting younger employees to, bring them in as new hires, especially within these shift-based industries. They're very familiar with that sort of technology. And in fact, it's very much a green flag to them. If you are kind of speaking their language to that sense, and even just having that QR code in the window being like, we're hiring here, apply here, so easy. And they're like, oh, this place is with it. They understand what I need. They probably have technology on the back end, with scheduling and stuff like that I will enjoy using as an employee. So I'm telling you, it's just about implementing those quick, easy tools, whether or not they are paid for or they are free, and just having that decluttered mindset at the end of the day. Cool. Dana, I'm curious, what should HR work into their day-to-day to make sure when they're hiring the people that will actually remain loyal to them at the end of the day and, kind of hang on to that retention?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think, first of all, it comes even before they walk in the door in terms of making sure that we are recruiting and hiring properly. So first of all, it's identifying what are our organizational or our company core competencies. What does it look like to be a successful employee at my organization? And starting from a place of there where we're identifying those characteristics and we're hiring and recruiting for those characteristics, that's going to help ensure that we're bringing in the right people, that we're bringing in the right match, people that are going to enjoy working at our company and be successful there. Because ultimately, if you enjoy what you do and you're successful at what you do, you're happy and you're going to be loyal to where you are. The other key tactic, I think, really is what we like to say as always ask, always be asking. As HR leaders, we want to always be asking our employees, Meredith, I think you mentioned this before, about their experience, not just what we want them to have, but what they are actually experiencing. And I think there's three main points where we need to be asking these questions, at least 3, if not all across the employee life cycle. Because if we're asking at these 3 points, that's when we can really start to predict employee loyalty. And the 3 areas are, the first is with the new hire survey. So right away, when employees are starting in a company, identifying what's working, what's not. Then when they're there a little bit longer, the stay interview, seeing, again, what their employee experience has been like once they're there for a little bit longer. And then finally, if they do leave, the exit interview, and why employees who are not loyal, why they are leaving. Because when we're able to gather information from those 3 main touch points, that's when we can really start to predict what employee loyalty looks like at our organization and where the breakdowns are. And we can start to see, if new hires are consistently answering on the new hire survey in the negative about 3 areas, then we know what to address. We know what we need to address, and we know what is going to sway someone to be loyal or less loyal at our organization. And that's, as you mentioned, that's really where AI in HR comes in, where we become the AI for HR, where we can start to predict what employee loyalty is going to look like in our organization and what it's going to take to retain employees.
You mentioned a couple of things that I want to touch on that's very key. First of all, the fact that, we're talking about how tech is going to really support HR teams, but that's all it is, right? It's the supportive factor. It's not just unloading it all to technology. We need that human element. And Chason mentioned this earlier, like ChatGPT, it has a long way to go, right? And we are looking at a very messy version of what maybe in potential future could be great and amazing. But right now, it needs a little bit of hand-holding. And that's where us humans luckily come in, right? And we need to have technology truly as our sideline character, our best friend in the movie that is going to help the main character succeed. And that is those smaller HR teams. I'm also curious, Dana, based off, what you said for the audience, what do you guys do for exit interviews? Are you guys doing 30, 60, 90-day check-ins at the beginning? What does that look like? Are you guys using those 3 strategies? I'm just curious, what everyone's processes are there.